Oi oi, it's your boy, the Tyson Pedro of Eating Crow. Jack Slack, coming before you hat in hand on September 11th, wishing happy thoughts to even the losers and the haters. And we have to have an honest conversation because I was not giving someone their credit. I looked at this middleweight and I said, that's a shitty style. All he does is poke jabs at people. He's very boring. He will never win a UFC title. And now I have to reconsider what I said. Because Gegard Mousasi can for sure beat this bum Sean Strickland, and he's won a UFC title. Way! Is Gegard Mousasi the best middleweight on the planet again? Ignore the losses in Bellator. We're talking about whether he'd beat the UFC champion. No, big upset. One of the big ones. Authored by Sean Strickland on Saturday night. Very impressive. And one that I wrote a large article about immediately afterwards. In fact, as someone pointed out, damn, it took Sean Strickland winning a UFC title to bring back Killing the King. I wrote, How Sean Strickland Killed the King. It's a pretty good article. And yeah, if you don't know, I'm writing breakdowns on Sundays now to get them out in time for people to actually enjoy them. And for them to be, hot off the press when people are just thinking about, I wonder what Slacky thought of that fight. I wonder how Sean Strickland outstruck a guy who fought for a glory title. So yes, plugging that, if you want to know my actual thoughts, and boy am I humbled and do I eat crow. I'm seething over Sean Strickland winning the UFC middleweight title or whatever it is. And it all comes out in that article. All you have to do is go and join the Patreon. And it's just every word is baked, emulsified with my tears over how upset I am by this result. No, honestly, this was about the most interesting result you could have. And I thought, watching the fight, it was an interesting one because I said this about halfway through the article, but not a lot actually happened. There was an awful lot of stuff going on, as in footworking and positioning and so on, but not an awful lot landed. And not aside from the big moment in round one, there weren't an awful lot of big moments. But it's still, it was incredibly exciting to watch because of the implications of everything. It reminded me a lot of, if you've ever seen the film Hero with Jet Li and Donnie Yen and some other people. Jet Li and Donnie Yen meet up and they sit opposite each other, or kneel opposite each other, and then it goes, the battle unfolded in our minds. And then it's low saturation footage of the two of them fighting. And then they come out of it and he goes, well, we both know you'll lose. And then he goes through it with anyway and dies nobly. But there was some real the battle unfolded in our minds shit going on in this one. But yes, go read the article for all the ins and outs of technical stuff. But the gist of it was that some of this we should have seen coming. I mean, on the Boycast I said jabs and double jabs Adesanya's never liked. And we talked about that tons before. When we talked about Robert Whittaker rematch, I was saying, well, I don't understand why people think that this is a foregone conclusion. If Whittaker actually just uses his jab, gets in better position to do it, he can give Adesanya some trouble, and he did. But then we talk about ring craft and getting Adesanya towards the fence, and the jab and the double jab are the tools to do that. Strickland is all about forward pressure, but I didn't think he'd get Adesanya to the fence as much as he did. I thought Adesanya's very good. I mean, people are going to retcon this now, but in MMA, Adesanya is among the best at staying off the fence, and when he hits the fence, he does the smart things. Faking one way, faking the other, going out the direction of least resistance, trying to get you to commit to a side and then circling out the other side. Stuff we talk about all the time when we're talking about Adesanya, and he was doing that, but the problem was that, that takes a lot of energy, and Sean Strickland walking up to you doesn't take him much energy at all. And the words I used in the article were I come to see the method of his madness, and I referenced Musashi. Yep, Sean Strickland is Musashi, that's where we're getting now. But Musashi had a big section on, the only thing Musashi ever said about footwork. He was a duelist in feudal Japan. And the only thing he ever said about footwork was don't worry about footwork. Your feet should just be doing the job of ferrying you across. Any fancy footwork, anything like that, unimportant. And Strickland kind of does that because his footwork is literally just walking. He has none of the wear on him of maintaining a stance or flattening out his stance to sidestep and things like that. He's literally just walking along. And walking is the action that you do all day, every day. You're not going to get tired doing it. Whereas Israel Adesanya head faking 2 directions, weaving, doing a juke and then a sidestep to the other side. That stuff will wear on you over time. So that was really interesting. The thing that I didn't read in this fight, which I feel like looking back I should have, is that Israel Adesanya's best punches are all straight. He's not a big hooker. There's a couple of examples of him hitting people with hooks, but his hooks are like... You watch someone like... it's an unfair example because Alex Pereira has like the best left hook in kickboxing history. But someone like Alex Pereira, who his hook is powerful, it's smooth, it has a lot of weight behind it, but he doesn't overcommit on it. And then you watch when Izzy wants to throw his left hook and he's like leaning back at the waist, chin in the air. He gets his whole body weight behind it, but he like turns himself with it, and if he misses, he's sort of off position. And it's just never been his best shot. And that was the knockdown in round 1. He got backed onto the fence, he bit down on his mouthpiece and said, I'm going to swing, which, fair enough, his last fight, he was losing that, and then he bit down on his mouthpiece and swung, and that worked out great. But he got clipped by Strickland with the right straight down the centre, right straight inside the left hook. Barney Ross called that the most dangerous counterpunch in boxing. If you hit it on someone, they're dead. But on Strickland's part, I was really impressed with the seriousness with which he took this fight. If you watch his first round, he is so disciplined for Sean Strickland. When Izzy throws his first front kick, he parries it across his body. The other hand is up high, ready to catch if it turns into a question mark kick. And everything from then on, there's still some of the same old Strickland reaching for things, but he's constantly aware of Izzy's kicks. And what he does is he walks Izzy down and just takes little steps back whenever Izzy tries to swing off the fence or kick him. And then comes back with a 1-2. And it works really, really well. And you can watch that difference in the economy of motion. Izzy throws a big strike and then has to dart out to the side and run off to the other side of the ring. And Sean Strickland just trots up to him and throws a 1-2, or takes a strike and throws a 1-2 immediately afterwards. Everything he does, because he isn't in a great stance to hit. He doesn't hit with much power most of the time, but he is in the stance where he throws it from all the time, and he could just throw it from basically anything that lands on him. He just throws the 1-2 immediately afterwards. Some of his best connections in this fight are picking up his leg to check a calf kick or a inside low kick, and then poking the jab. But the thing that I think flew under the radar, I've seen a few people's accounts of this fight or like analyses of this fight, and during the fight too, the commentators said nothing about it. Fucking Teeps. I mean, DC literally said, aside from that Teep, he hasn't really kicked. He's doing this all with his boxing, and I know the Teep, mate. This is one of the best teeping performances I've seen in MMA ever. I'm not exaggerating, because the Teep, you see people who can front kick a person's belly button through their back. Sean O'Malley does great work with the front kick. He throws powerful front kicks off the rear leg, and the front kick itself makes the opponent charge at him, and he hits him on the counter. The front kick is his artillery, basically. He throws it from long distance to get the counters that he wants. Conor McGregor did similar things, pushing people back to the fence and front kicking them with his rear leg. I'm talking about little poking, nudging Teeps, the kind that cut people off mid-motion. The kind that become really tricky if you're a big kicker. If you watch any Muay Thai, some very big kickers have been thrown off just by their opponent picking up their leg and poking them as they kick. If you get nudged with the ball of someone's foot, or even just the whole sole, you don't even have to be trying to hurt someone. If you nudge them with your foot when they're throwing a power kick, they'll fall over. Not, to their back going, oh, I'm a turtle, I can't get up, but just they'll stumble. And nobody wants to stumble every time they kick, because then they hit the ropes or the fence and you charge in and you hit them. So Strickland was picking up his knees constantly, doing the, sometimes called a Thai march. You see people pick. Gideon Jaquani did it to Alexajuk the other day. He threw a load of right leg kicks, picked up his right knee, stepped through with the left knee. Picking up your knees like that and walking forwards. And it chews up space. And that's the same reason we talk about the double jab. The double jab and the knee raise are two ways to make the guy move without committing anything. And the bonus of the knee raise is that it checks kicks a lot of the time too. Maybe not the best kick. If your leg's not turned out into the kick, it's not as good. But if your leg's up and it stops the guy's shin from wrapping around your liver, that's always good. Or if the guy's kicking your legs and your leg is out of the way. So there was that, and he'd throw little pokes off that, but just picking up the knees and walking forwards was doing great work for Strickland. And then there was the push kick that he hit every time Izzy got towards the fence. He would step up with his lead leg, and just because that was the thing, his stance is so short, he's always bringing his back foot up underneath him. And that's something we're going to get into with Tuivasa later. Being in a narrow stance makes you more liable to fall over if you're hit well, but it does mean that you can step your rear foot back, and lengthen your stance and put yourself in a better position to counterpunch and drop away from things, which is what Strickland was doing a lot. And you can also step forward a bit more you can do like a fencer's thrusting step as opposed to just shuffling forwards. So having your feet underneath you like that makes that possible, but it also means you can pick up your lead leg quickly and poke them with the teep. And Strickland, there were 9 or 10 examples in this fight, I think, of Strickland stepping up as Izzy was just skirting along the fence and poking him with the teep just above the belt line, maybe below his belly button because he wasn't wearing the Usyk super high up to your nip shorts, but just poking him and pushing him back onto the fence. And he wasn't able to... I think that's one of the things in this fight. Strickland wasn't able to often step in and like combination punch off things. He wasn't like Matt Brown. If Matt Brown got the sort of positions that Strickland was getting, he just went ham. He would catch you circling on the fence, he'd push kick you into it, or he'd round kick your guard, and then he'd come in with 4 punches afterwards. And Strickland did that once or twice in the fight, but for most of the 25 minutes, he was just pot-shotting. Another reason, actually, that the Izzy fight, maybe we should have seen this coming, because Izzy is not a combination puncher. He's 1 and 2 at a time. But everything he throws is straight down the centre, and that's what Strickland's good at dealing with. You did see, because Strickland reaches for things when they come down the centre, and he shoulder rolls too, which was nice, but because he reaches for things with his right hand when you jab, Izzy was trying to go jab, left hook around the side, which is, of course, how Alex Pereira caught him. But because Strickland was taking like a half step back every time Izzy came in, his hand would be out of position, but the left hook would hit him in the lead shoulder. There really were a couple of little adjustments that made a big difference for him here. And also because Izzy throws his left hook like a long whipping punch, whereas you would need to step into Strickland's chest and throw it like a big leaping left hook to get to him when he's trying to fade away. Think of Joe Frazier knocking down Muhammad Ali in their first fight, when the great photo of him leaning all the way back and Frazier still getting to him. One of the things that was absolutely wild on the subject of front kicks was Izzy likes to frame on people with his hands and circle out that way. It's nice because if you're good at it, you can get your shoulders up, and basically the shoulder roll, you do not need your arm curled into your body, you don't need your arm high, you just need your shoulder up and your chin down, and you get down behind it. So you can do that with straightened arms. Watch Roy Jones. Vlad Klitschko was good at this. But, that's what the long guard is in Muay Thai. You stay down behind your shoulders. And Izzy's very good at doing that. One of the times that he got caught was by Kelvin Gastelum sort of elbow passing or arm dragging his arm out of the way as he was framing on Gastelum, and then running through where the arm had been and landing some punches. In this fight, whenever Izzy tries to frame on Sean's chest or head, he does it a lot after jabs, actually. He jabs and then leaves his fist out on the guy's head. To sort of push off them. Or when Izzy went southpaw and started trying to hand fight with the lead hand, Sean would pull his lead hand back to free it if he was hand fighting, but Sean would go 2 hands, grab the lead wrist, and throw a front kick. It's the weirdest shit. It was genuinely a new look. I've never seen that done before. Because it's ballsy. You gotta commit 2 hands to one side of the guy's body in a moment where he's supposed to be looking to blast you with the other hand. The reason that people hand fight with that lead hand is so that they can throw their rear hand. So he goes 2 hands on one, grabs the hand, and Izzy's trying to run away at that point, and then he has him chained in place to front kick him. And he did it 3 or 4 times in this fight. It's crazy. Go look at the article. I mean, I think I put up a clip of it on my Twitter as well, just saying brand new hand fighting techers in a joking way. But that was the first time I was watching the fight through. And I thought, that's weird. And then that was the first round. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, he starts landing it. Genuinely crazy to watch. I think most of you worked out the key to this was that Izzy got stuck on the back foot, which makes it very hard for a kicker and a guy who likes to pot shot and then take breaks. If you watch him against someone like Cannonier or the first round of Costa was supposed to be the pressure fighter and put him to the fence and stuff, and he runs after him a couple of times and then he just sort of stares at him. And those are the fights. I think that's why Izzy gets a reputation for boring fights. And it happened to Jose Aldo too. You get ahead and then you're like, why would I make wild exchanges? I'm being the surgeon here. I'm taking this guy apart. And there was none of that in this fight. Sean just kept walking up to him. And he's having to do big, lateral movement is hard work. Moving constantly is hard work. He's having to throw kicks on the back foot, which is just really hard to do. People used to get, there was one dude in particular who used to get angry at me when I go like, you can't kick on the back foot. And it's not strictly true. You can slide back and time a kick, but you've got to have a really good read on the guy's movement, and he's got to give you the space to do it. Basically, if you keep someone backing up the whole time, it makes it very hard for them to kick effectively, because they constantly risk you stepping up the inside of the kick. I think if they do a rematch, you've got to look for more knees and elbows from Izzy. One of the things that you can do to combat constant forward pressure, especially when the guy wants to stand right on top of you, is to try and land some knees to the belly. Great example of that would be like Czech Congo versus Sergei Haritonov from the other year. I'm always talking about that one, but Sergei Haritonov was battering him, walking him down. And then Czech Congo goes, oh shit, and like closes his eye, throws a knee, hits Sergei Haritonov in the body. And Sergei makes like a visible, oh, I didn't like that. And then Czech Congo just continues circling the cage and landing these knees for the next couple of minutes until he gets the finish. Still the same old Strickland in most ways, not a lot of body work, which I would have loved to see. I mean, particularly, not a lot of low kicks, which I would have loved to see. Like, when he was getting like, come on, motherfucker, at the end, you see what he values as like an actual real strike. Because where most people, when they go like, come on, motherfucker, would be swinging like Max Holloway versus Ricardo Lamas, he does a step-up low kick, and it's like one of about 3 he's thrown in the fight. So that's how he values those. I thought it was very funny that he twice attempted, when Izzy parried his front kick, he twice attempted to spinning back fist off it, including in that bit at the end where he's like, come on, motherfucker. I was going to be like, that's the one he did against Orlando Sanchez, R.I.P. If you've never seen that clip, very funny. Orlando Sanchez, bit of a piece of shit as a person. Can't speak ill of the dead because he has died since then. Don't want to make a joke about Strickland dim-macking him with the back fist, but I already have, so I'm sorry. But he was the most boring ADCC winner ever. He won the biggest grappling championship in grappling by not winning a single point. He won every match by shoving people and getting advantages. And then there's footage of him and Sean Strickland grappling on the feet, and he hits a little elbow crank on Strickland, and Strickland's like, motherfucker, and Teeps him and then tries to spinning backhand him. It was pretty funny given that Strickland like knocks people out who just aren't on his level in sparring and puts clips of it online. But it was very funny that he went for that move twice here. And I suppose it's something that he's got to have drilled into him, because if you throw a lot of lead leg push kicks or lead leg teeps or lead leg front kicks of the snapping variety, you're going to get them parried at some point in the fight. So you've got to have something to back it up. And turning into the spinning back fist is always a good choice. The Korean Zombie had a kickboxing match years ago against some decent kickboxer, and the spinning back fist was not legal in the fight, but he knocked him out with it anyway. And it was like such a moral victory for Chan Sung-jung to knock this guy out with an illegal strike. But yes, is there anything more to say? I mean, there's loads more to say about actual technical stuff. Go read the article, How Sean Strickland Killed the King. It's on my Patreon. Just thinking about results like this, I am not excited. I think the words that I said on the podcast, I was listening back to the Boycast to hear what I said about this fight ahead of time. And I say like, well, perhaps he does some work with the jab. Perhaps he does some good work with the double jab. Both things that Izzy has trouble with, blah, 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 blah. And then I went, but if he wins this fight, I can't see him becoming an interesting fighter. So I think this fight was real, because I was watching it and I was really compelled. But I think it was interesting because of all the context and the stakes. And like I said, the battle unfolding in their minds. There weren't an awful lot of big strikes landed after that first round. And not a single takedown attempted. Did like the one time that Strickland got caught out of position and Izzy threw some strikes at him and Strickland ducked into the clinch. That was a good move. But am I hyped to pay for Sean Strickland pay-per-views? No, not really. Am I hyped for Strickland versus Cannonier 2? No, not really. But I can say, like, without an ounce of shame, no, I can say without an ounce of a lie, that this was genuinely very exciting. And these are the sort of results that, like, are exciting for me, because I started doing this just like writing studies of fighters to improve myself, to learn more about fighting myself. And, when you see someone, you can watch the fight and you can understand why it's happening. Or, certainly if you've got a good level of technical understanding, you can understand why it's happening. And you're going like, damn, I can't believe I didn't see a bit of that coming. And those are the ones that make you like reconsider how you see things. And those are really exciting, to be honest. The reason that I whacked out an article within like 6 hours watching this event was because I was psyched as hell. So thank you, Sean Strickland, for not only like doing an amazing upset and giving me something to write about, but like motivating me to write something. I never thought being excited by a Sean Strickland fight would make that happen. And then, of course, he called out his deadbeat dad. And if you remember the Pantoja fight, I'm all up for calling out deadbeat dads. I think we should all get together and beat up Sean Strickland's dad. Unless he's dead. I don't actually listen to much of the pre-fight stuff. But, yes, being the king of the apex is the best base for MMA. So what else was there on this card? A lot of shite, to be honest. I mean, it didn't change it from being like a pretty weak card. Basically, I think the really crazy thing is that, like, we talked about how they booked all the Australian fighters 6 weeks ago, so all the big Australian names aren't on this card, or all the big Kiwi names aren't on this card. Then it came out that New South Wales has done what Saudi Arabia and UAE, or Saudi Arabia has done with WWE, Abu Dhabi's done with the UFC. They promised the UFC $16 million for 3 events. But where the Saudis are so demanding, they give like the WWE a list of demands. I mean, they held people hostage last time, but they gave them a list of demands, and they said, we want this, this, and this. We want the best women's wrestlers in the world, and we don't want to see an ounce of skin. And and there was, during their like mini Royal Rumble, greatest Royal Rumble, whatever they called it, they had to drag out a sumo wrestler who'd never done pro wrestling before and never did pro wrestling since, because one Saudi prince didn't know that Yokozuna was dead. And they were like, we want to see Yokozuna. We want to see all the big stars. Undertaker, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage. And that's how demanding the Saudis are about WWE. If you see the Abu Dhabi events for the UFC, the lineups for those, they're pretty demanding too. New South Wales paid $16 million and couldn't get any fucking Australian fighters on the card even, except for like Tai Tuivasa. And the B team of Australian fighters. The worst Taffer. Tyson Pedro. Fucking hell. So, yeah, that's what was crazy about this event. They did have Laura Sanko on commentary for the first time, and I thought she did a really good job, with the exception of this fight, Volkov versus Tuivasa. I mean, everyone said, everyone caught DC saying, can you imagine having a 6'7" man on top of you? And Sanko saying, no thanks, and I thought that was pretty funny. But during this fight, they're going like, Volkov needs to start checking those kicks. Oh my God, look, the front of his shin's blue. And you're like, he's checked every kick. The front of his shin is blue because he's been checking the kicks. Like, I'm watching him check every kick and punch Tai Tuivasa in the face and rock him to his boots every time. And DC's like, what a war, it's so back and forth. It's crazy. This one reminded me of that dude who fought, I think it was Superleg the other week. This guy was like, Superleg's, I don't know, 5'9" or something like that. I can't remember what weight class he is, but he's 5'9", he's the champion of their weight class in one. He's fighting some guy who's 6'3". So to be that weight at 6'3", you've got to be a fucking beanpole. And the tall guy, comes out and he puts his lead leg out there, being like, it's the nearest target to you. You'll easily get that. And Superleg tries to kick it, he pulls it back, hits him 2 times, and he does it like every time Superleg goes for that lead leg. So Superleg basically goes, right, fuck it, bites down on his mouthpiece, backs him onto the ropes and beats him up. But if you're trying to like play footsie and tap the lead leg with a very tall, long guy who's using it as bait, very hard. The game plan from Tai Tuivasa's corner for this fight was clearly the lead leg's the nearest thing. We'll go for that and then we'll work our way in when he's checking it. I've seen it work, but he wasn't even getting to the lead leg. If you watched him, like there's moments where he has to run up to kick. Volkov checks it, and then he's like switches stances while kicking because he's had to kick so far ahead of himself. And Volkov hits him twice on the way out. Volkov was picking up his leg, punching Tuivasa, and then kicking him with the same leg again before Tuivasa could get out. Absolutely blasting him. And Tuivasa was doing a hopeless job of building from that calf kick. And this is where I wanted to talk about like sneaking up the back leg and stuff like that. We were talking about Strickland's shortened stance and so on. But every technique from a striking perspective is governed by the position of your back foot within your stance. The more underneath your hip you can bring your back foot, the further you can extend onto your lead foot and lunge, like a fencer. Makes sense for jabs, because a jab is basically a fencer's lunge anyway. But it's true of other punches. When it comes to kicks, particularly like the rear leg calf kick to the lead leg, your lead foot placement, where your lead foot is, governs how far the kick can go. Your lead foot is your pivot foot, or your anchor. So you still want to thrust as far into their range as possible to plant that foot and then kick. You can't like hang back and try and throw kicks from outside range. You've got to be able to like bounce in, put the foot down real close to them while they move back, and then hammer the low kick. So a great example of this in action would be Kyoji Horiguchi, who does tons of bouncing, sneaking up his back foot, explodes forward and hits people. And against Kai Asakura, I was about to say Kara France, that'd be a good fight. Against Kai Asakura the second time, Horiguchi does all that sort of like karate point fighting stuff to sneak himself in, bursts in just to plant the lead leg, and then calf kicks on the end of it. And Kai Asakura has no hope of getting out of the way. So there was no subtlety there with Tuivasa. And the other thing is like, there's like a handful of skills that the more and more I'm considering like must-haves for MMA fighters, because you have to deal with so many different kinds of fighter and so many different kinds of thing. You know, you're not just dealing with like an orthodox fighter, a southpaw, the brawler, the boxer, blah, blah, blah. Those old archetypes from like boxing textbooks. You're dealing with like every type of martial artist there is. And even within that, like, you know, two sambists don't fight the same. Two judoka do not fight the same. But I'm starting to believe that there's like a handful of skills that everyone needs on the feet. One of them, I've been saying for a while, is like you need to be able to throw a calf kick with your rear leg, but you need to be as good throwing a step-up calf kick with your lead leg. You also need to be able to do both of those off both stances, ideally. If you think about like Usman versus Colby the first time, Colby lands a couple of calf kicks, Usman switches stances, Colby can't calf kick from the other. Colby can't step up lead leg calf kick, and he can't change stances in calf kick. And he would have done great if he just abandoned the boxing and the wrestling and just switched stances and calf kicked. But you know, there's 4 possible permutations of the stances. Me, orthodox and southpaw. You, orthodox and southpaw. If you're only good calf kicking from one of those permutations, you're a bit fucked if the other guy does anything else, or if he hurts you and you have to change stances. So there's that. Calf kicks off both legs from both stances. And then there's making distance, because at some point you're going to fight someone much taller than you. It just happens. In a sport where everyone is trying to weight cut the most, you know, you're probably not going to meet as big a one as Tai Tuivasa versus Volkov or Mark Hunt versus Stefan Struve if you're not a heavyweight. But there's still the Sean Woodsons of the world out there. So you need to be able to sneak that back foot up and do some fucking like point fighting bursting. Or closing them down towards the fence. There's like 2 ways you can deal with that, but you've got to have those skills on tap or on hand. Or at least somewhere in the old noggin ready to use. I say noggin, you know, it's got to be drilled into your muscle memory. But Tuivasa didn't have that. So he gets beaten up. The commentators completely ignore Volkov checking every kick and blasting with punches. He gets mounted, he gets Ezekiel'd. And then afterwards Volkov says, I learned that from Olenek, which was cool. And it does make sense because, like, Olenek has freakishly long arms for his build, or for anyone's build. But Volkov is also a gigantic man with very, very long arms, so he should be able to Ezekiel people. No gi. I will say Tai Tuivasa looked about 50 years old here. He's taken a couple of rough beatings in his last couple, and, yeah, probably should take some time off. Didn't help, you know, the greasy hair. That looked weird too, growing your hair out and having it well greasy. Manel Kape and Felipe dos Santos actually had a decent fight, which is good for Felipe dos Santos, but bad for Manel Kape because, like, who was this guy who took your life and death? But people love Kape. They love him for saying the F word that everyone doesn't like, and they love him for, you know, actually being pretty exciting in the flyweight class. But he's always been a very hit and miss fighter, because sometimes he could smoke people and you go, damn, that guy's incredible. And all the coaches at ATT will tell you, like, he's the most talented guy in the room, or AKA, whichever one he's at. But then he'll just have bizarre fights, like the Nicolau fight, the Pantoja fight, the second Asakura fight. He just doesn't turn it on. Justin Taffer knocked out Austin Lane. Austin Lane came out like kicking and circling, and I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. A tall heavyweight who has that frame and can kick. Didn't really use his frames as well. You know, his hands on people. I'm always talking about like long fighters using kicks and frames, because people like John Jones and Aljamain Sterling did great on the feet just by kicking and then using their hands. They don't box at all. They just use their fucking hands as barriers and as guards. But he threw a kick at Justin Taffer, and then Justin Taffer did like the shortest, hardest side kick to the knee I've ever seen. It was like he was stomping someone. And Austin Lane just lost all his pop. I've seen that happen before. It was Mark Jacasey versus Timo Pakelen. Mark Jacasey hits him with a oblique kick. Oh no, I think it was a low line side kick with the lead leg. And you can see Pakelen's behavior. We're always talking about this, but behavior change completely. If someone's behavior changes, they didn't like what just happened to them. Because Pakelen suddenly runs at him and gets knocked out on the counter. But he'd previously been fighting very tentatively, so he got, and then it came out obviously afterwards that he lost his MCL and ACL when that sidekick hit him in the knee. So Taffa stomped on his knee. Austin Lane sort of stood still for a minute, threw a punch or tried to throw again, and Taffa knocked him out with a counter right hook to a left straight, I think. Tyson Pedro beat Anton Turkalj, possibly the worst fighter in the UFC right now. Of course, it's a light heavyweight because they don't cut anyone from light heavyweight. Dreadful fight. Tyson Pedro, I was hype about him a while ago, but then he kept losing fights he should win. Like I said last time, he's the last person knocked out by Shogun, which is a little bit... Ulberg versus Da Un Jung was interesting because I thought, looking at this, Da Un Jung, 2 losses on the trot, knocked out by Dustin Jacoby in one of them. Carlos Ulberg, 4 wins on the trot, 3 knockouts on the trot. It was pretty obvious what they wanted to happen. Also, Ulberg, Australian. So it was pretty obvious what they wanted to happen here. But it took Ulberg a long time to get it done. He was doing well with his jab, and he was doing well, he's very, very long. He's built like a rower. And when Da Un Jung came in, he would just circle his arm round and slap him with a left hook that was just shoulder. And it would hurt Jung, but it really, wasn't as stiff as it could be. And, Ulberg, it went almost the full 3 rounds. And the question was always, does Ulberg have the gas tank? Because he's looked pretty weak there before. But it went almost the distance, and Jung wasn't really pushing him, and he still didn't look great. He's got a great jab and a great left hook, but I really am not seeing much else from this guy at the moment. Gross shoulder injury for Jack Jenkins, posting on an Uchimata. And, that's about it. It was an okay card. Sean Strickland was the highlight and stole the show. If you want to read more about that, sign up to the Patreon, support the podcast, get breakdowns every week and the Boycast and everything cool that I do over on the Patreon. If you want to read what I'm writing anytime, fightprimer.com. And if you want to send an email to the podcast, jackslackpodcast@gmail.com. I am your boy, Jack Slack. Welcome to the Strickland era. Bless.